Marcus remained silent for the remainder of the day. After the close encounter with Andrea leaving him a bit shaken, he left the ship under Arcturus's command and decided to take a flight to clear his head. He pulled out a very small two-person helicopter known as a Little Bird and quickly flew away. The first thing he did was to do a flyby of the air purifier towers he built and see what was going on. The enormous mass of trees had begun completely surrounding the tower, encroaching on the factory floor nearby and crawling all over the tower. Drones fluttering about in a frenzy, trimming rapidly growing branches and roots in an attempt to train the trees to not grow in certain places. Marcus took a good look around it, taking notes in his head as to how the trees had learned not to clog up the conveyor belts or grew around doors that drones used. The trees had also grown a lot more within the last 24 hours, with new roots spreading almost everywhere, and the trees themselves now almost 4 meters higher than previous. Marcus shook his head and flew past another part of the factory, one that had been deactivated. Various assembly machines and equipment, all leading to a silo dug deep into the underground closed by a hatch. Various belts and mechanical arms waiting at specific locations to place in tech and ingredients for processing. An ICBM silo. A long pipe pumping in a yellow liquid with a separate belt loading in high-grade nuclear warheads. Marcus sighed, shaking his head and pressed some buttons on his wearable. The silo was ripped out of the ground, disassembled, and the hole filled in completely. Marcus continued his journey for the next 2 hours, just flying for the sake of it, running up and down the factory complex, chasing one of the trains that were still running, and enjoying the view from above the factory. A factory that was slowly being disassembled as parts and components for various items either transferred ownership from him to the priests, or were simply disassembled for resources. Drones that used to carry his blue and purple paint job were now sporting a scarlet, red, and gold. Marcus decided to head into a small clearing amidst 6 purifier towers, dead center of the factory. He landed in the middle of this clearing, turning the engine off. He stood still for a few moments, taking a deep breath. He clapped his hands together twice, and the factory suddenly stopped. The loud screeching of metal filled the air as trains suddenly slammed on the brakes, while the happy hum of drones flying around suddenly wound down to a stop. The beautiful roar of nuclear reactors and power generators slowed to an imperceptible background hum, while the sparking from battery banks and capacitors suddenly ceased. Within seconds, the entire area went dead silent. Noise that carried for miles around suddenly stopped. The roaring trains and flying machines that comprised the factory just plain ended. Marcus sat quietly on the ground in the grass for a few minutes, just breathing in the sounds of simple silence. The quiet didn't last long, and Marcus laughed to himself half-heartedly as the noise of nature took over the noise of the factory. Birds, creatures, deer, even the roar of a bear coming from the forests that now surround the air purifiers. The only true silence is that which is found after death, he said to himself with a smirk, remembering a phrase his grandfather used to say. He used his wearable device and typed a few things. A hologram of a massive circular building appeared in front of him, encompassing almost the entirety of the circular clearing. It was a massive cathedral-like structure, sporting his family colors, corporate emblem, and faction logos on banners and etched into walls and reliefs. He looked at it momentarily and shook his head. No, Dad wouldn't want this, he said to himself and erased the blueprint completely. Marcus sat quietly on the ground, starting fresh. A plain and simple design was chosen this time, a standard rectangular-shaped cathedral with offshoot rooms on either side. It was a large building in the style of Notre Dame, but the Gothic style was removed, replaced with Mechanicus decorations and reliefs, mixed with the local medieval elven-style architecture instead. The exterior had Mechanicus reliefs etched into it, the main structure built of a mixture of granite as a base, slate and marble as the rim and detail. The columns and exterior pillars, made to appear like cogwheels, gears, mechanisms, or pistons. The front end of it was a mixture of architecture, with the sharp angles of high Gothic mixed with the curvy, natural elven nature designs. Marcus made sure to incorporate specific places around it full of nutrient-rich soil for trees to grow freely. Markings on the sides by the roof made it easy for vines and other plants to climb up the wall. The exterior grounds were transformed into a large park, with fountains, a hedge maze, rose garden, and all of it surrounded by a large wall made of French and English lavender. The interior was built as a massive mausoleum, with the majority of space underground in massive tombs, connected by a single central circular stairway with a lift. The underground tombs stretched nearly a half-mile down, and the spires and towers upwards of 20 stories high. After adding details such as banners, faction logos, emblems, and patterns on various pillars, he started working on more important details: trees, flower beds, an irrigation system, among other things, but one feature standing out: a small sapling growing in the absolute center of the building, in the middle of the large staircase leading to the lower floors. His projections showed it growing to massive size, with the stained glass windows on every wall and tower allowing sunlight to get through to grow it. Marcus made some final changes to the layout to make it easier to move around, making some fancier artwork and working with other parts. After 6 hours of sitting on the grass, Marcus was finally satisfied with his work. Standing up, he clapped his hands again, and the sudden merciless roar of engines, trains, and machines flooded the air as the factory once again sprang to life. Marcus took one more look at his creation and finalized the design. Marcus' flagship suddenly started churning its own internal factories, and the reactor, which had been idling quietly for a while, reactivated to a glorious whine as it went straight up to 80% power. A compartment in the lower sections of the ship, along the entire lower hull closest to the ground, opened up, leaving a ramp down. This revealed a massive army of hundreds of heavily customized robots. Large tracked drones the size of elephants with heavy arms awoke with a low groan. "By the glory of Gaia, I have awoken," they all said in unison, the chorus of artificial voice and mechanical grinding echoing through the air for miles. They unfolded to their full height of 8 meters in 2 perfect lines of machines. As soon as they hit the grass, the line of droids behind them roared to life. Humanoid construction, each one wearing a heavy cloak similar to that of the priests, but in Marcus's colors with the Mechanicus logo. By the strength of the machine, they all yelled in perfect chorus. They unfolded themselves in a perfect display of coordination, then marched in lockstep down the ramp. Finally, behind them, a litany of cargo drones, each one capable of carrying an insanely heavy load, started up. The air filled with the thunderous screech of jet engines and screaming machinery. By the void we renew the cycle. The mechanical chorus echoed across the valley once again. The larger machines numbered 57. The humanoid machines numbered 208. The flyers numbered 72. By our will and our will alone, the universe begins to move. The army of machines quickly assembled in a parade outside the ship. They marched with purpose towards the central clearing where Marcus was standing. The loud footsteps and monstrous roar of engines echoed through the air. The voices of the machines, starting a low, beautiful chant, flooded the valley. The footsteps formed a beat. The low hum of the engines and clanking of tank tracks quickly conformed into a rhythm. The machines began to sing in a Gregorian chant along with their beat, the music booming through the atmosphere. A mixture of both their artificial voices, the marching of their feet, and the roaring echo of their music sent shockwaves through the world that could hear it. The words spoken made sense only to Marcus and the machines. Even Arcturus was fully into it. His own voice, broadcast inside the ship, added to the chorus as they marched with purpose. The song was a machine god rendition of Salve Regina to a mecha-punk-style melody. Within the ship itself, all the guests, both the royal delegation and the lovely ladies, were awestruck at the sight. Even the priesthood was shocked, and were in visible ecstasy at the sight of each machine. Jacqueline was more enamored than the others were. Her elven eyes made sure she could see every last detail on the machines. The machine priests were beside themselves with happiness. The elves looked to them for guidance, trying to understand what was going on. They were simply waved away and told to leave Marcus alone while he mourned in peace. Jacqueline looked and noticed something about this new army. Every last machine had fundamental differences about its construction. Every detail and trim piece, decoration, or extra bit on each one was different in one way or another. Bulkier arms on one, thinner but stronger arms on the other. A different pattern etched into the armor plating, a set of exposed cables wrapped into a different pattern here and there. Different toys such as teddies, ribbons, or other small paraphernalia hanging from various points, or worn as backpacks by the machines. Every last machine on that field was made entirely by hand. It didn't take long for the machines to reach their destination. Within seconds, they began to build, digging, hauling, cutting parts of the mountain, and all working in a perfect synchronized chorus, still singing their mechanical hymn as the massive cathedral structure took shape absurdly fast. The heavier machines cutting solid, multi-ton blocks of stone, the flyers carrying it to a precise spot, then the smaller ones using hand tools with their machine precision and speed to cut the blocks to size, then detailing them. The entire process, to those who could see or hear it, was mesmerizing. A mixture of emotions ran through the spectators: terror, reverence, awe, and shock at the sight of these machines working away in perfect harmony as the building slowly assembled. Andrea wiped a tear off her cheek. "Welp, I guess he found home." "What?" Saris asked with a crooked brow. "The youngling has found home. He's assembling the mausoleum that will serve his family, likely for generations to come. It looks like he's planning to stay after all." "See?" one of the priests said as Marcus's banner was raised on the main spire. "So he's home? What does this mean exactly?" Ariana asked. "It means a lot of things, but mostly it means Marcus is staying here to start a new home, a new life. A move which I will formally endorse, of course," Edward said as he looked out the window. "Do your people not have a claim on the forgotten human lands at all?" one of the Mechanicus priests asked. "No. We had our own problems and were fearful of the plague possibly affecting us, so we had long since abandoned that prospect. I see no reason to pursue that line of thinking anyway, especially not now," Taris replied with a somber tone. "What exactly does this mean for us, though?" Valerian asked as he peered out at the construction, now recognizing some of the stylistic choices in its design. "We will continue operations as normal for now, but it is likely that your ascension will take nowhere near as much time as expected. With the Mechanicus here to properly guide you, as well as Marcus's exceptional military presence, it is likely you will be out of reach of any meddling authorities for the foreseeable future," the priest said, smiling at the crowd. "That was an issue before then?" Saris asked with a scared squeak in her voice. "Oh yes. Humanity has never forgotten its petty squabbles or personal idiocy. But you see, Marcus is a corsair. You are in safe hands." "Cult Machine and a corsair? You are in safe hands," Andrea responded with a sly smirk. Arcturus and the priest chuckled at that, and resumed watching the finishing touches on the massive mausoleum. The group just stood there in silence, watching the spectacle unfold. After several hours, it was finally done. The machines inspected their work and then lined up, making a full procession as the main cargo hold was finally opened. With exceptional care, every coffin, urn, and box was removed one by one and carried into the building. Marcus stood at the entrance, placing his hand on each one, uttering a prayer and personal goodbye to each. With each coffin that had flags or military honors, Marcus presented a salute and carefully folded each flag and banner, placing it in an ornate flagpole above the tomb himself. Slowly the death march carried on, and the procession was only done shortly before dinner time. The entire time this happened, the priests and guests simply watched, trying to be as unobtrusive as possible. When dinner finally came around, Marcus joined everyone for the meal, but remained silent through the evening, then sealed himself off in the bridge for the night. Andrea simply shrugged when the others asked for guidance, simply saying, "Let him mourn in peace." The following morning, Marcus went outside at the first light of the day and observed his handiwork. He chuckled at the sight of saplings growing, vines spreading, and forestry already beginning to encroach on the building, being carefully tended by the machines that laid the foundation. When Marcus was finally satisfied, he returned to the main hall where negotiations were being conducted, remaining quiet for proceedings. Andrea walked in the room, immediately catching his eye. He walked up to her and grabbed her, hauling her over his left shoulder. She squealed, alerting everyone to his presence. He then walked over to Saris. He grabbed her too, hauling her over his right shoulder. He then carried the pair towards the door. He turned around, looking at the crowd. "Mine," he said with a firm growl, then disappeared down the corridor. The looks on Andrea and Saris's faces said it all as they both looked back at the crowd, jaws wide open. Well then, I guess this is where the chapter ends and a new story begins, one of the priests said with a smile. And the next one will have to be heavily censored, another replied, both of them having a laugh. The chamber went into hysterics and abandoned further proceedings, deciding to use the opportunity of the lightheartedness to have a little party instead. With everything now in hand, the entire world breathed a sigh of relief.